All right. Welcome, everyone, to another week of the Fantasy Timeline. This is episode 168, proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'll be your host again tonight, Drew at dr_pra, joined with one of our original founders here, Bill at SuperDuperFlex. Bill, how are you feeling this week?
Yeah, good. Another good week. Fantasy football wise, it was pretty average, I guess. But yeah, the
Yeah, nothing
Lions,
too crazy.
another win, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of we're hitting the real part of the fantasy football season now. Like we were talking beforehand, there's some injuries we have to deal with. A lot of buys, a lot of teams on buy this week. So this is when you really either appreciate that you built depth or you're cursing yourself for not building depth. So
Yeah, it'll be fun to see how things work out here. But yeah, kind of a weird week NFL wise. The parity of the league, right? If we start with good, bad, and ugly, just real quick here. One of the things I was thinking through is what's fun about the NFL is any given Sunday, right? The parity that we see in the teams here, even with teams that we feel like are should be totally outmatched. We have no more undefeated teams. So by week 6, we have everybody with their first loss, and it feels like most teams are still in it, especially with the 17th week in the season and those things going on. So, your thoughts there? Anything that did you see either of the big upsets coming between the Jets and the Browns, or
I definitely did not see the Jets one happening. But I mean, I guess what do both of those games have in common is really, really good defenses. And so I guess if you have an elite, team, one side or the other of the ball, you have a chance to win every week. And we saw it, in both of those games. And those defenses really showed the offense's deficiencies and or their quarterbacks in particular, and
yeah,
um, neither, Hurts is a little bit more of a surprise, of course, but yeah, I mean, it's just really good defense, really good game plan. Maybe it's just a perfect matchup against that particular team because we see that every year, right? Where there's just this those head scratchers where sometimes just the way those teams are built are perfect to combat the other team's strengths and
yeah.
or attack their weaknesses. So, um, it's just 1 week. I still feel like those two are the best teams in the NFC. Um, even I want to think that the Lions are, but like I mean, I know they're not, and um, I don't think that changes really anything for those teams for this year.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Um, you saw people on Twitter talking about it. What are the commonalities, or is there one team that should feel worse than the other losing this week? And I do agree. I think with Hurts, that feels a little bit more out of the ordinary, a little bit more surprising, especially knowing that San Fran lost Debo and CMC during the matchup there. So I guess for the 49ers, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have a little bit more of a struggle here until they get everybody back healthy. This will really be a big test for Brock Purdy, I think, for a lot of folks that are supporting him. How does he work through this? A couple of throws, I think, Sunday that I personally have been waiting to see. The guy has had incredible composure and just way outperformed any expectations that I had coming into this season for him so far.
Well, and then even Trent Williams got hurt, which
Yeah.
going up against um,
Yeah,
what's his
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Yeah, like I mean, he was able to do a little bit more after that, and because you really didn't hear a whole lot about him like early in the game, and then once Trent Williams got hurt, it definitely things got amped up a bit. So maybe it was just one of those days, and for them in particular, the Philly one is just crazy. Like But I was listening to The Athletic, and they were kind of talking about like what the defense was doing, and they were like really confusing. They were giving looks that they had never seen before, like the NFL guys hadn't seen before. So like, kudos to Saleh for throwing some things out there that could confuse a Super Bowl quarterback.
Yeah, which again, not super surprising there, knowing again week one can always be a little squirrely, but seeing what they did with the Bills, week one was I think a little bit of foreshadowing there. So elite defense. It goes back to I think what you were talking about last week with building from the trenches out, right? Elite defensive line in both cases, and real committed to the pressure there, which is starting to show its worth. So as far as bad, speaking of the Bills, I have to fall on my sword here a little bit. I mean, a win is a win, right? But that was a rough game. I really thought we were going to lose that one in the last drive there.
Yeah, that was a surprising showing, right? Like, I mean, I guess it's a division game, so maybe that's one of the reasons. But like, just keep throwing it to Diggs, man. Just like, it feels like that it's such a cheat code, and maybe it's not, and he got it to him when he could, but it's just a really weird. Like, I'm still a little concerned about their run game. It just doesn't feel like I guess I wish they used James Cook more, but then I understand he's a smaller back, so like you can't put him in every situation, and then you have like a 39-year-old Latavius Murray. I know he's like 33, but I mean he still looks adequate, right? Like Murray, like I mean he's not great, but you know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a guy that can pass, protect, and he's a little bit of a bigger body, so he's got to get the goal line stuff, especially now that Damian Harris got his neck dinged up. So
yeah, that was a bad first, really about bad 49 minutes of that game there. Outside of the 2 touchdowns, even the second touchdown was that was one of those like hold your breath moments as he's thrown across his body into traffic, but it worked out. So. But let's get on to, we mentioned it earlier, week 7, ugly. I'm going to go ahead and just call the bye week. Anything beyond my QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1 on most of my teams, it's getting pretty ugly. I saw a poll today where somebody was trying to find their last flex starter, and we were seeing names like Juwan Jennings and Kendre Miller and some of these other guys that, might have 12 total points this year, and we have to put them in because most of us are in competitive leagues that require us to have a full roster. Do you have who is your ugliest start this week for you on one of your teams? I know you just mentioned you're in a 16-team league or two, so I'm guessing those are probably getting stretched a little bit, maybe a 14-teamer.
Yeah, I'm actually flipping through that right now. Like I have like Tutu. Actually, it's looking at it's not terrible. Tutu, Fant, Bateman.
Yep.
All in the same. But I don't have a ton of buys on that team. So, yeah, I don't know. I actually really typically build with depth. So I've been fortunate. Okay. Like I'm not sweating too much in any of my leagues. And it might just be that I don't have these particular teams and I'm just going to get hammered a different week, So like I don't really pay attention to them like most of us probably, right? I mean, especially in Dynasty, you can't really get too aggressive changing based on bye weeks.
No.
But yeah, when I did my lineups, there was a few where I was just going, ooh, gee, like I really have to start him. But like nobody that was like, I'm starting like a backup tight end or, something like that. It's just
speaking with Latavius Murray,
Tutu Atwell or somebody like that.
I've got Murray in one lineup here, but this is one of Rocky's leagues where you have to start 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers. But yeah, I've got Noah Fant starting in a fair number of places. Anywhere that has a tight end premium, he's probably starting for me. I've got Wan'Dale Robinson starting. I don't know if that's how ugly that is at this point. It looks like maybe he's getting some extra work, but it's getting rough out there. And I'm looking at a lot of previews, and they look real good right now because a lot of folks have people on buys. Then it's just kind of that waiting game to see who do they try to pick up or who do they slide in there. But yeah, hopefully you've got the depth that you need, and I guess that's kind of a philosophical question as far as trying to build with depth versus trying to stay top heavy in some of your leagues, which, of course, some of that depends on what your starting requirements are and roster size and so forth. But is that kind of your general preference? Is you'd rather have depth where you can and then just expect to have holes to patch?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually what I do. Just because I know every year, at least entering the season, that's my goal. And because there's always guys that we think are going to contribute that don't. And so it ends up being where, if I have 8 wide receivers I'm comfortable with, I end up with like 6 maybe. And then if I see that I'm having 1 or 2 guys on my bench constantly, I may just try to combine a couple of players just to kind of boost my starting lineup then. But I usually like to feel like I can click any box and not sweat it. Obviously it doesn't matter for the ones that, when we're tanking or whatever, but any of them that I feel are like true contenders, I definitely like to have some depth. Like in one league, I lost Jefferson and I'm not sweating it, and
It's nice.
yeah. So like, it's just nice not having to trade him at a discount and because I can start Marquise Brown,
Yeah.
or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, that's usually the way I do it, but I know that sometimes that's hard because that's in an older league, where you can kind of accumulate talent and things like that. So if it's like year 1, year 2, oftentimes it's really difficult to have the depth like that. So yeah, I mean, definitely running backs I'm struggling because that's where I kind of relax and don't really focus. So like certain teams I'm starting like Craig Reynolds and and like maybe Kenneth Gainwell. Like, I mean, it's rough. One team I think I'm starting CEH and Pacheco. Yeah, so like that's where I'm sweating a bit. I just hope that my wide receivers can kind of cover that position.
Yeah, speaking of filling in gaps and covering, not just the bye, but we talked about some injuries and stuff here. But a couple of big names, both quarterback, running back this week that also got dinged up, which only adds to the scarcity at some of these positions, right? So with Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields, a couple of young guys that looked like Fields was maybe starting to put some things together this season, and then Anthony Richardson, when he was on the field, looked like he was going to tease us with maybe his ceiling that we all thought he had when we drafted him, probably number 1 or number 2 overall in rookie drafts. I mean, if you got these guys, I'm assuming you're pretty well holding. Are there any leagues where you have one of these guys and you're looking to try to flip them for points now if you're a strong contender?
I mean, if I had Fields, I would. I don't have Fields anywhere except for like a 1 QB league, but I also have Burrow, so I'm not really worried about it. But like, I mean, I wouldn't mind trying to move him just because there's a lot more questions about what's going to happen to him after the season. But like Richardson, I mean, it really depends how your team's built, right? Like if you need that quarterback and Richardson's gone for the year, I mean, I totally get wanting to move him. And, who's to say he ever stays healthy, So it's something that you just have to consider. Do I flip him now when people are still excited about him, and maybe taking teams willing to do that just so they lose, the points? Like, could you do something for Kyler, or something like that, just where maybe that helps each team, where you get a starting quarterback if you need somebody. Obviously I don't know if I would do that until I knew he was playing, but
yeah,
like, I don't know. I mean, I'm less worried about Richardson moving forward. So like, I'm trying to hold him anywhere I have him. Unfortunately, I build typically with more depth at QB, so I can kind of weather it because I usually have like Goff as my third or something like that. And now he's a top
Nice.
6 quarterback, you know. So,
Yeah, he is.
I mean, by points, not by actual ability. Like, let's be clear.
Sure. Yeah, I've got one league, a 12-teamer, where I've actually lost 2 of my 5 quarterbacks so far. I started with Hurts. I've got Richardson and Stroud that I picked up in the draft this year, and then I've got Rodgers on IR right now, who I already lost, and then Stafford's my other quarterback. So I've been fortunate to have the depth there, but I've been looking at, do I want to try to see if I can flip Richardson now to a team that maybe wants to shed some points, because we are a potential points league. And so I'm looking at a couple teams that are kind of toward the bottom of the standings, and I'm looking at a guy that's got Dak right now, and I'm trying to think, is there a package I could put together with Dak plus like a Hollywood and maybe a second or something like that? Do I want to break him down into pieces, because we're a deeper league, we require a lot of starters? So those are some ideas I've been kicking around. I haven't pulled the trigger on an offer yet, but I didn't know what your thoughts were on kind of where you draw the line on like what's an acceptable return for a quarterback, plus what kind of piece would you want to have that'd be usable.
How many teams is it?
It's 12-team.
Okay. And it's just a super flex,
tight end premium,
and start 11 or
yeah, I think it's start 11 offensive players. We do IDP as well, which isn't quite as big of a part, but I mean it is, but it is, for our audience here, it's just to the offensive side.
I get wanting to trade and include Dak, but like, do you really need a fourth, like a fifth quarterback? I mean, I get wanting to getting one back, but couldn't you like really make a monster move and add like a crusher on your team? Like if you trade Richardson for, some huge wide receiver or something like that, like, could you, like, because you're a contender, right?
Yeah, I'm probably a top 4 or 5 team, and we do where top half gets in the playoffs. So I've got a good chance of getting in the playoffs. And yes, I think because I have Jefferson, who's on IR right now as well. I just got JT back, so once everybody's healthy, if I get everybody healthy at the same time, I think I could be in a pretty good spot to.
Yeah, like could you do Richardson plus for Chase? Or something like that, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you just got these 2, you got the 2 elite wide receivers on the same roster. Or tier down, and then you also add like a running back or a first rounder or something. You know what I mean? Like get that next tier of wide receiver and a first. I wonder if that's something you could do.
Let me take a look here and just see who some of the bottom teams have. Chase actually just got traded from probably the strongest team to now probably the 3rd strongest team, 4th strongest team.
So that's not happening.
Probably not, because the guy that just got Chase has Burrow, and he's been looking for that staff. But let's see here. The guy with Dak also has got Hollywood, Jameson. Nobody huge. That's kind of where he is. Let me see if there's another. I could look at like another team here that's kind of middle of the road, which he actually has built a really good team. Just got hit with injuries this year, so but he's got like an Andrews and an Amon-Ra.
Yeah, like one of those and a first for Richardson.
Yeah, he's got Dobbs, Lawrence, Tua. He's got Bryce Young on taxi.
Okay, so he's got enough quarterbacks also.
Enough quarterbacks, yeah. Probably where I missed the boat here is the last team in the league. He actually sent Tua to one of the top contenders probably about 2 weeks ago, and that would have been the one where I could have maybe landed something big there.
What about Richardson for Amon-Ra or Andrews plus Bryce Young, and then you add something else on top, and then you get a downgrade who could end up being, you know what I mean? Like you're buying low, and you just throw something else, whatever needs to be added. I don't know what that would be. I would have to imagine they'd want something reasonable back.
Yeah, which I've got enough, whether it's wide receiver or I've got I don't have a ton of picks next year. I've got a couple of firsts already. But yeah, I could look at. I've got a handful of wide receivers that I could maybe swap out.
Yeah, I mean, it'd almost probably be like something around a first value, I would think, on top.
Yeah, like I've got a Christian Watson that I just got a couple weeks ago that I could add in. It's probably in that area.
Yeah, that would be that'd be fun. Yeah, I think that's right in that range. That's kind of the player I think you would have to add.
Yeah, let me see here. I'm on the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Let me see if that what that pulls up here. Bryce Love, or not Bryce Love.
Yeah, not Bryce Love. Bryce Young.
Like that value is way off.
What's that?
He's saying Bryce Love compared.
Oh, right.
Then Amon-Ra. Wow, yeah, that's almost spot on.
I'm just pulling up some trades for Richardson. Richardson for Barkley and Diggs. Richardson and Nico for Burrow and Goddard. Richardson in a second for Lamar. Richardson in a first for Herbert in a second. Richardson for Bryce Young and Rachaad White.
Yeah, I'd pick somebody besides Rachaad White, but I don't hate that either.
Yeah, so I mean, there's something in that, you know.
Yeah.
Whether you like, at least that's in the range for you to maybe add something to your starters. Like, I would definitely rather add something to Richardson to upgrade two positions. You know what I mean? At least upgrade one of your other starting positions. Like, I think I wouldn't mind doing that, the Andrews or the Amon-Ra plus Bryce Young. Because I don't think that's I mean, you're buying low on Bryce Young, and you know he's going to be a starter at least for the next 2-3 years. And he's showing signs of improvement. And, I mean, he's just got to learn how to play with his size in this league, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've got to feel this guy out here and see. But what's funny is even if I went after both Amon-Ra and Andrews and just left Bryce Young out of it, it's not that far off either. It's a little bit in my favor according to DTC.
Oh, that would be fun. But he might be, because he already has quarterbacks, he might want to get rid of one of them.
Yeah. I'll have to message him and see what he's up for here. But yeah, that's the one that I've been looking at to see, you know, is it worth, if I'm really trying to make a push this year, you know, what do I need to get back to help me, you know, really feel good about trying to attack the playoffs versus, is it more prudent to just say I've already got starting quarterbacks? Is there somewhere else I can try to find the value? But yeah, I think for next year, you know, my goal, I should have probably a top 4 pick or so that I traded for, and then I'll have my own. You know, I would love to try to weasel my way into the top 2 or 3 and have a legit shot at adding like Marvin Harrison Jr. next year or something like that to my team. Otherwise, you know, if I sit there with a 104, you know, hope that like Brock Bowers makes it or something in a tight end premium and see. But otherwise, yeah, I've been in this league for my buddy and I co-commissioned. So we started this, I think, 4 seasons ago, and I've been in the middle of the road the whole time. So I finally committed to a rebuild 2 years ago. Got Brees with the 101, then last year had the 102 and earned the 105. So I've been slowly building there. But then what's funny with this league is the IDP portion. Not too many guys are super familiar with it. So the folks that have invested a little bit have definitely, you know, found some advantages there. Because we have, I think, out of our top 100 scorers right now, something like 30 to 35 of them are IDP players. So your IDPs can swing your week for sure, which we wanted to make that balance. But the tough part is, I think a lot of people assume they're contenders for a lot longer because they see the potential any given week, which makes it interesting. It does make trading a little bit different when, you know, it's not quite as easy maybe to pick out who the actual contenders are versus folks that are going to be going into a straight rebuild. So the fun part is if you commit early, you can be the first to rebuild pretty quick. So, but yeah. So any other injuries? Like I know Monty just got hurt, so you've got everybody clamoring to see is Gibbs healthy, or you mentioned you've got Craig Reynolds potentially slotting in as a deep flex somewhere. I haven't heard back on. I see Debo has potential to play this week, but CMC, I don't know how bad that's looking for him or how long term that might be.
Yeah, I heard that it was like a pain tolerance thing for him. So, who the hell knows? But that's just one reporter saying that. But yeah, the Monty one kind of bums me out, but that's just part of football, right? Like you deal with these constantly should anybody be stunned when a running back gets hurt? Or even quarterbacks at this point, right? With all these pass rushers and stuff like that. Like it's just feels like the safest position's wide receiver. And these guys are so much, faster that they're just, I feel like I've just heard so many more hamstring injuries this year.
Yeah.
And calf injuries, like maybe I'm just paying attention more. I don't know, or it's just, there's so many resources available that you just keep.
Yeah, it's just all in front of you.
Yeah. But it just feels like there's been so many more of those kind of soft tissue issues. And none of us should be stunned, and we should all be prepared because we lived through the COVID seasons.
Yeah.
So like if you got aggressive and just built a mind-blowing starting lineup and now you're dealing with this, that's a risk you took. And add another game, add just whatever else, add just
you got international travel now is a more regular thing. You got so many other things that are offsetting all of the modern medicine and information that we've got. But we've got some guys coming back too, though, right? Not to just stay on the downer side, but we've got Deontay maybe coming back this week after their bye. You mentioned Kyler Murray earlier, right? I think he was spotted at practice this week. So we've got some guys that are potentially coming back soon too. Any expectations or anything that you're curious to see what happens with any of these guys that are soon to return?
I feel like there could be like a little bit of a Deontay coming back. How does that affect George Pickens? Because he's had some good weeks, and I think Pittsburgh's been a little bit more aggressive in using him because they had to. But there was also no Freiermuth. So like, at least a couple of those weeks there's no Freiermuth. So it's like, how much does that affect Pickens? I've kind of been actively trying to get rid of a share or two of him just to kind of
get that,
because I feel like there's a decent amount of risk. He is part of that offense, and he's going to be fine. And I think as Pickett kind of grows a little bit more in it, he's going to be more aggressive throwing to Pickens. And I think Pickens is starting to run more routes, so it's a little he's going to have more opportunities that way. But Deontay, there's a reason why he gets all those targets. It's just because he gets open, not he drops them. But like, you can chalk him up for about 9-10 targets per game. And because he's almost like an extension of the running game, and God, if they could only change a little bit of offense to give him like some double moves or something, you know what I mean? Like everybody should be jumping. That's why his ADOT's so low, and everybody's jumping. He gets tackled immediately, but Matt Canada. So not sure that's going to happen.
What about Pickett? What do you think about his progression here so far? And do you have any thoughts about maybe trying to add more of him now that he's going to have more of the weapons back and he's deeper in the second year, or you think he is what he is?
I'm not actively looking to add him. If you find somebody who's fed up, I would totally be fine adding him, but I'm not paying premium or anything like that, or I'm only had 2 quarterbacks, I really want Pickett. It's just, to me, he's always going to be the, like Tannehill, like late career Tannehill, like kind of guy that you're okay having as your third quarterback. And that's about it. Like, I mean, hopefully he grows. Hopefully things change. I mean, sometimes we really kind of kill players when they don't succeed immediately. And maybe that's what, I mean, probably all of us are doing to a point with him. But teams are going to get sick of if he doesn't, perform. I mean, is Pittsburgh going to have him play in the next 2 years?
Yeah.
Could they get aggressive and go try to grab like a Kirk Cousins in the offseason or somebody like that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Justin
really what they
Fields.
do. Usually they show a lot of loyalty. But he was like the 20th pick in the first round. It's not like he was the 5th pick.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of question marks. And does the new offensive coordinator say this guy just doesn't fit what we want to do? We want a running quarterback. Let's draft guy in the 2nd round or something and use him. So at some point you got to figure out if it's worth, depending on how much you have to give up, is it worth the risk of him not even being a starter soon? Or the points that he actually even scores if he is a starter, is it any different than some late career guy? Like I bet you could get Stafford for less than Pickett right now. And I would much prefer to have Stafford as my QB3 than Pickett.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with Kupp back here.
Yeah. He's looking like nothing changed. Like he wasn't hurt. So
just walked right back into it.
Yeah. And I mean, they're going to be a fun team, really, but they really have no running backs either, just like the Lions. So, like they signed Gaskin and Darrell Henderson to their practice squad, or I don't know. I think Gaskin might have to be on the active roster because he was on a practice squad. So
yeah, I think he's active. And then who's their 6th round rookie that they're likely starting it? This is where we are.
Yeah, I want to say it's not Evans. It's the other guy, right? It's the guy that played for TCU and then transferred to Ole Miss.
Evans actually sounds pretty. No,
isn't Evans the
Evans
Tampa Bay?
No, Tampa Bay got the kid from Syracuse. So I think you're right. I think it is. Oh God, I should know this too.
All right, I'm pulling it up. I got it. It's right. It's Zach Evans. Yeah. Okay.
It's Zach Evans in LA. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go to the Tampa now. It is Sean Tucker.
Yeah, Tucker.
Okay. So I was right and questioned myself.
You were, yeah. So yeah. Question marks all over the place as far as the running backs in LA, and the old reliable of Cooper Kupp, and then now you know what you have in Puka, and you've got a couple other guys that have shown up as well. So you got plenty of options there for Stafford to thread the needle when he wants to, get rid of it quick, and hopefully they'll be in some competitive games where he needs to throw it 35, 40 times. And
I bet they're loving this. You know what I mean? Like, you got to think McVay and Stafford and them are just loving it, and just rip it and see what happens. It's kind of one of those years where the pressure's not on, and you can just kind of go out there, have fun, and see what happens. And they're 3-3. Who would have ever thought that? They're actually in the playoffs if they ended today. So,
yeah, that's wild. Speaking of Kupp and some of these older guys, I mean, something else I was going to bring up during the good portion. It's good to be an older player who maybe started coming on the scene a little bit later. So you look at a guy like Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen this year, and then Raheem Mostert, right, who I know you've got in one of the leagues that we're in. So some of these guys that maybe didn't have the initial wear and tear early on, matured a little bit differently, had huge weeks this past week. But out of these types of guys, like, what if you're a contender and maybe you need some depth because you were super top heavy, what are you offering to get a guy like Adam Thielen right now?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, I mean, I actually have added him a few times over the past few weeks, but I feel like as each week goes by, people are asking more and more, and I think they're
Sure.
probably expecting a little too much at this point. A lot of times, I mean, I'm happy to pay a second for him. I mean, he is the target. Like, I mean, who do they even trade for that's going to change that? I don't know. Like, if they sign Judy, if they trade for Judy or something, like, I don't expect anything to change. Um, if Thielen's basically the slot guy, that's why we're not really
Yep.
seeing Mingo out there. And, I think that that's perfect for him at his age. And I mean, we might see him out there for 2-3 more years. Like, I mean, didn't they sign him to a 3-year contract?
I don't remember how long it is, but yeah, I mean, with that type of position playing, like you said, wide receivers lasting longer.
I mean, it's like Larry Fitzgerald when he, 3-year, $25 million deal.
Yeah, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon.
So he's definitely like playing for them the next 2 years. So like, if you give up a second round pick for that, I mean, I don't see the problem, especially if you're a contender. It's going to be a late second, and I mean, I think that they're going to somebody's going to expect more than that at this point. I mean, I don't know what are you willing to pay? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm truly contending and I have my own second, I would be willing to at this point, especially if I know, um, I've got some question marks, or I know that I just need to have. He would be my best flex option in most of my teams. Hopefully, if I'm truly contending, he's not going to be my wide receiver 2, though he definitely could be. But yeah, I would say my second would be certainly doable. I don't think I can get past, if I do a second and a third or something like that. I would add more later picks versus moving it earlier. Like if I had somebody else's, top 15 pick, I'm probably not doing that. And I don't think I would do like my next 2 seconds to get there. But I feel like that late second, like a top 20 pick or so, top 20, 24 pick, somewhere in that range feels fine, especially, knowing that contract. I assumed it was a year or 2.
Yeah, so he's 14 million dead cap this year. He's 11 million dead cap next year, but he gets paid 9 million. So I can't see them cutting him next year. It would be in 2025. Most of the trades that I'm seeing in the DLF Trade Finder are in that second range, a second and a third. Let's see here. Thielen and a fifth for a second and a fourth.
Sure.
Thielen and a fourth for Dontavian Wicks in a second. Yeah, so I mean, it's right in that range, and I mean, I don't know what his. He's got to be like on the cusp of a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in points per game at this point.
Oh, gotta be. Let's see here. Adam Thielen. Let's filter this by wide receivers.
Yeah, he's 6 in OG in
Yeah,
points
that's
per
wild.
game. So, but he's in that, like, if you take Justin Jefferson to DJ Moore, they're all within like a point.
Yeah.
Of course, Justin Jefferson was out the 1 week that lowered his average, and there's like 6 guys from like 6 to let's see 11 that are all within 0.7 points per game.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, he's in there. He's a wide receiver 1 at this point, and I mean,
Yeah.
I don't expect him to keep that up, but even if you get a QB 2 or a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, like if it's a late 2, early third for a second rounder, basically a starter for you,
Yeah.
I think that's totally fine. And I mean, we kind of get caught up in our priors, right? Like if we nobody liked him. Nobody wanted him. Nobody was drafting him because he's so old, and he didn't show it last year with the Vikings. But maybe
Yep.
that's just because he was getting used differently, and he made the move and feels, and now he's performing, and he's like the safety blanket for Bryce Young, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't hate it. And I mean, if you lose a second, big deal. So
Yeah.
like, I think
I'm just trying.
I could pay 2 late seconds for him and not sweat that much about it. Probably a mid second would be like probably the earliest I would pay individually, I think.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the OG league, I'm thinking I think 2 seasons ago, I sent my second to get Brandon Cooks when I was making a playoff push. So I
Yeah.
think that, when you start comparing what have you done before in the past, the guys that we've given seconds up for, whether it's that, borderline running back that you think will be a flex. And I mean, yeah, a couple seasons ago, I think a lot of us were paying seconds to get Kareem Hunt on our team at that point when he was kind of coming back. So for a guy that's done nothing but produce the first, 5 out of the 6 weeks here at a ridiculous rate, they got their bye this week. So I would love to try to get him on a roster or two this week in some of the leagues where I'm contending where he is on bye. And maybe people aren't worried about like, I'm going to see a bunch of points and regret it right away.
Yeah, that's
And
a good
then
idea.
he's going to be healthy coming out of the bye, presumably. And yeah, even if he does get injured in 4 or 5 weeks right before playoffs or something, if he helps, push you up where you get a better seating, you get a bye week, something like that. I think a lot of times when you look back in retrospect, this is what I did with like my TSA, like pre-check. I remember enough time standing in line as regular security thinking, how much would I pay right now to be in that other line, right? And you have enough of those moments where you look back and, okay, would I have given my second to be the number 3 seed instead of the number 5 seed and have a different matchup in week 15? Yes, if I go back in time, I would have given that late second, or what I think will be a late second, to avoid this team right now in the playoffs. So yeah, I think that's something I know we've tried to shoot some trades out after we've talked a couple of these Wednesday nights. So it'll be interesting to see if either one of us can make something happen there in the league.
Yeah, there's this is definitely the time of year to start making moves because people are starting to really like get antsy about their teams. Like, yeah, I'm 2-3, or I'm 2-4. I guess it'd be 2-4 at this point, or 3-3, but I'm the lowest scoring 3-3 team, and I should just dump. But at the same time, make sure that you're not dumping just to dump, because like if you're the one trading away players, don't give stuff away just to get points off your team before you check to see like how your league gives out draft picks. Mm-hmm. So like if it's based on record, you don't necessarily have to dump every player off your roster. If it's max points or potential points, see how many teams are already tanking, and if you could even catch up if you get rid of these players. Because if you can't, why sell at a discount? And I think we saw it a lot last year where people were tanking for Bijan and destroyed their team. Like, yeah. Okay, now you have Bijan, or but where do you go now, right? And Bijan's not, he's not Raheem Mostert this year, so like, he's not helping you win games. You know what I mean? To that level. And so like, just kind of don't destroy your team just to get Caleb, just because you might be just as happy getting Drake May at 103 or 102. Or Harrison at the other one, or Brock Bowers if you're in tight end premium or a 2 tight end league. Like, those are all top of the line elite, draft picks. So don't get too crazy. Like, I'm not going to feel bad if I end up with 103 in some leagues that I'm dumping, like, no. Okay, cool. Whoever those 3 guys falls to me, I'll take. And do we really know Caleb Williams is going to be the be all end all? Like, I mean, we don't know. It looks like it. He looks fantastic, but
wasn't that Trevor Lawrence?
Exactly. And people were Bryce Young, like, but like he's another one. Like he was the guy that people were talking about since his freshman year. Like, oh my God, when he comes out, and then, he's just another rookie quarterback at this point. It's like, just got to be careful when you're too aggressive dumping. And I get it. Like, and there's people who decided they were going to dump in the preseason. So like, you're already 6 weeks behind these people. So like, you may never even have a chance to get there. So just be careful before you just say, oh, I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to destroy my team. And I've seen that happen in so many leagues where I'm like, you're never getting a top 3 pick because there's already 3 teams that have been tanking for so long. So it's just something that people need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and being careful for somebody may throw 3 seconds at you for something, but what's the value of those 3 seconds? How good do you feel about your process, knowing that the average hit rate is so low, right? Which again, if you're in a place where maybe you took over an orphan or a dispersal that just didn't work out well, then great, you want all the dart throws you can get. But yeah, take a moment, think about it. We've got a couple questions coming in here. We'll put this one up here. Speaking of, we mentioned Christian Watson a little bit earlier. Chumphy Donk, good to see you, man. Who are you flexing, Christian Watson or Calvin Ridley? And do you think Davante Adams is going to come back and be a stud? Why don't you answer both parts on your end there, Bill, and then we'll see if we agree.
Who's Green Bay play? I'm going Calvin Ridley. I just trust the quarterback, and so I would probably start him. He's still getting targets for the most part, so I'm starting Ridley. And yes, I think Davante is going to be a stud. Like he is a stud, and he's always going to be a stud until he decides to not be a stud. Like as long as he's healthy. I mean, the problem is he's going to have Aiden O'Connell throwing to him, or Brian Hoyer, go green. But like, he's still Davante Adams. Like, he's done it with bad quarterbacks before. I think when he was with Aiden O'Connell, he still ended up with a pretty good stat line.
Yeah.
He's just QB proof. If there's a wide receiver, I mean, there's probably 5 to 7 wide receivers that are QB proof, and he's at the top.
He's got to be top of that list. Yeah.
Top 2.
That's just proving it. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, even if you're thinking like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, they've had quality quarterbacks for the entirety of the beginning of their career here. So, I see Pufftastic put in here. I just saw, Green Bay plays Denver, who has been an absolute sieve.
Yeah.
And the Jaguars play New Orleans, who's, not a walk in the park. So coming on a Thursday night with Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, with Trevor Lawrence possibly a little bit hobbled there. I probably lean Christian Watson.
I think with a week to prepare for Denver, because they were just on bye. I don't know. I think I still go Calvin Ridley. I mean, like the New Orleans Saints, I think Carr threw 50 times last week. So I mean, it's not like they're having a ton of plays too. So, and then they smoked, 34-0 against New England, I think it was. So like, I feel like that's not as bad. Like, the defense is good, but I mean, I don't know. I think I still go Ridley because I think Watson has more people. He's just so boomer bust, and there are still good corners on Denver. Like, I think
Surtain, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you got to think he's going to be put on Watson, right?
I mean, I don't know enough about their defensive scheme, if they like split the field or if they match up with best player, those types of things.
Yeah, but their defense is a hunk of shit. But they looked okay against the Chiefs. Like, they didn't look horrible. Like,
that's tough.
So maybe they're cleaning stuff up.
Got a split decision there. And yes, I agree with Bill.
Just blame me either way.
I do agree. Yeah, Davante Adams. I don't know that we have a better current wide receiver one that is as quarterback proof as he is. You'd have to go back probably to DeAndre Hopkins in his prime when we saw him go through his cycle of QBs in Houston and afterwards. But yeah, I think Adams is just going to be, as long as he is 75% healthy or better, he's just going to demand so much of the targets, and he is so wily as a veteran at this point that yeah, I think he'll catch whatever's near him and he'll find a way to get open. So I wouldn't have any concerns there. And puff pass kick is agreeing with you, Bill. So I'm still outnumbered. Josh isn't here, and I'm still outnumbered.
I have a question for you. I had a trade offer today. It's in a start 2 tight end league. And a guy, does Dalton Schultz interest you? He's scored a lot the last 3 weeks, but he's also scored a touchdown all 3 weeks. And he wants either Charbonnet or Kendre Miller. And I mean, it's start 2 tight end. I have Logan Thomas, Ertz, and Musgrave at this point. Like, those are my 3 top tight ends, I guess. So I don't have studs by any means, but
and who's your tight end 1?
My tight end 1, I mean, I don't know. Ertz, Logan Thomas, or Musgrave. So like, I am a playoff team. Like, I'm just worried that, the reason that Schultz has been targeted more recently is because Tank Dell's out, and, maybe they started focusing more on the, the middle of the field. I don't know. Like,
well, they certainly don't have, he's seeing some fair targets the last 2 weeks. I mean, out of these first 6 weeks, he's averaging like 4.5, 5 targets a game, which isn't terrible if you're in is there a premium as well, or is it just you have to start 2? So it's okay. So, I mean, I feel like his floor is relatively safe. Yeah, the touchdowns definitely skew the scoring, but the first 3 weeks with no touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, his best week was week 2, 7 targets, 4 catches. So I don't know what your thought. I know you're typically pretty blasé on running backs. So, I mean, if you have somebody that you don't mind
well, I mean, I'm pretty light at running backs, so I'm hesitant to get rid of them because, like, I have Charbonnet, Kendre, Kamara. I think Mostert maybe I traded Mostert away. I don't know. Okay. Oh, Bijan. I traded for Bijan in that one. So I do have Bijan. Yeah. And so Bijan and Kamara are my starters. And then Foreman, Charbonnet, and Kendre are my only other 3 running backs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think between those, I probably would prefer to give up Kendre versus Charbonnet if I had to pick between the 2. And yeah, and start 2, the 3 that you've got now, it's I mean, I don't know if you end up getting into a weird like matchup and you start picking, the wrong one of the.
Well, and that's my concern, right? Because is he that much of an upgrade over the other 3 guys? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't expect Ertz to keep getting the volume he's gotten. So I expect him to kind of tail off, I would imagine, especially with McBride there. And the team's not in. I mean, maybe they trade him. I don't know, but
I mean, you've got viable starters each week. I mean, Logan Thomas, his health is the biggest concern, right? Honestly, this past week was an anomaly. Typically, when he's been healthy and playing, he's scored well. So, I mean, he's probably, as long as he's healthy, I would consider him your tight end 1, and then you rotate between Ertz and I already forgot who your third, Musgrave. Yeah. I mean, you have Musgrave, who's young, so we can see if he comes on at all. That'll be hit or miss. So you're kind of playing matchups between him and Ertz. Honestly, it's probably the old guys to start. So yeah, I mean, until Logan Thomas gets injured,
just stay as is and just see what happens. I can always probably revisit this later. So
yeah, I mean, what would Schultz have to do in the next 4 weeks to make his cost of acquisition considerably more?
He would have to do what he's done the last 3 weeks.
Right. He'd have to score touchdowns for the next 5 weeks and have probably 4 or 5 catches every single week on average. And then you're starting to talk about, a noticeable pattern here, which again, we've talked a lot about Stroud, and we like Stroud as a quarterback. So getting a piece of that offense, I don't think is a bad idea. But like you said earlier, I don't know that it's a meaningful difference over what you've already got.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's kind of why I was like, I actually declined it before we spoke, but I was considering maybe
Sending it back.
I did make a big move this week. I think it was this week. I traded for Chase. In one league, it was a startup this offseason, and everybody wanted to move up, so I kept moving back, and I ended up getting a lot of I had 6 first rounders after the startup. And so I'm kind of sitting there looking at my team, and I actually really like my team. But like, I don't want to have 6 players added to my roster because I don't even see 6 cuts on my team. So I figured I would get aggressive for a guy. So I offered a mid, and it looks like it to be a mid, and then 2 like, in the 8 to 10 range at this point. And then I think he countered for one of my earlier first, and then I took that first out, changing some of the first, and then I offered a late second. So I ended up giving up a mid first, 2 later first, and a late second for Chase. So that was fun. So right now I have the 2, the 3, and the 5, the 102, 103, and 105.
Heck yeah. That's amazing. So, and then you added Chase to what is typically a pretty deep wide receiver group that you've got, I imagine.
Yeah. I have 0 running backs. That's actually the team where I'm starting Reynolds and Gainwell. So
very nice.
Yeah. So we'll see. But that was a fun trade, and he was getting nervous about his team because he has 0, like, his draft just didn't fall the way he hoped. So he's like, I just need pieces, got to break it up and get as many lottery tickets as possible.
Yeah, I mean, 3 firsts for Chase is a solid return. I've only got him on a couple of teams, but if that was presented to me, I would definitely have to think about that before clicking accept or decline.
Well, and he and I are battling for the 101 and 102. And so this like basically cements him getting the 101. So I kind of conceded the 101 by making this trade.
Sure.
So there was a little bit of nuance to that as well. So yeah.
No, I love that move. I think that's again just another way to get creative, and when you're talking to potential trade partners, right? I think most of us have gotten past this whole place of like, let me convince you why this is good for you, but in being full of shit about it. But I think that's another thing to think about when whether you're getting ready to make the move. I don't think I think about that enough. Like when I'm looking at, especially like my seconds, right? Like I think people that have listened to us long enough know that I value picks pretty highly. I enjoy having, that's an enjoyment part of me. Plus I like to think that there's a good chance that, I'm going to win the lottery every year. Right. So
sure. That's part of the entertainment of this, right?
Yeah. So, but that is one of those things that, you've always got to consider, okay, if I'm getting this person second and I'm giving up this player, you've got to be able to do some mental math there on, okay, where do I see this moving that second? So even though it might look like a mid-second now because they're 3-3, but they're the second or third highest scoring team, and they've just been hitting the gauntlet of high scoring teams, you've got to be prepared that second that they just gave you for, Nico Collins at this point, plus whatever, is now going to be, the 210 probably instead of the 206.
Right.
And vice versa. Right. So just some things to keep in mind as you're looking at the trade options and you're sending things out or you're evaluating, the calculator, it's telling you what it sees today. It's not forecasting based on the changes that are potentially going to come, because every move that you make has a ripple effect down the road here of what the scores will look like, what the standings will look like. So keep those kind of things in mind. But yeah, it's crazy. We've been at this for an hour here, Bill. I know every time you and I get on here, we wonder if we'll be able to fill the time to make our to make our show. And lo and behold, here we are. Appreciate a couple folks coming in the chat and asking some questions. And in case you were curious, puff pass kick here, being diplomatic and leaning my way on this one here as far as your tight end trade for Schultz there. Yes, I think that's for all of us that are pessimists at times. That's what we think, right? You trade for one person, the other guy, in this case, Bobby Trees will become the wide receiver one on the Texans. I hope not, because I have Nico a few places, but yeah.
He seems to be undervalued a little bit. Like you could still I feel like he's gonna be the guy there for a while. So like I feel like he's somebody that I might try to go at. I have 0 Nico Collins, and I feel like I need to go. It might be too late, honestly, but
it may be.
Versus what he's actually doing, it still might be worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like the value hasn't caught up to his performance yet.
Yeah, down week last week compared to what we saw in the first few weeks, and then a bye week again this week. So another guy that you might be able to snag from somebody, especially if it's a contender that maybe thinks they're deeper than they really are at wide receiver or something. You can give them somebody that actually is going to play this week. And swap them out. So I think there's some good moves to be made there. But anything else that's on your mind before we close out? Any last words of wisdom for the good people of our timeline listeners?
No, I don't. I'm done. I don't have any. Honestly, now's the time to, I guess, to get active. Kind of. If you have an extra 15 minutes or something, go look at one of your leagues and kind of, to evaluate your team versus the rest of the league. Try to make some moves to help you reach your goal, whatever that is. And, just spend a little bit of time. These are the weeks that really getting a good feel for where you are in your league is going to pay off later on. So I think that's probably the best thing I can suggest. And if you have 10 teams, maybe each day you spend 15 minutes on 2 teams or something like that, and obviously the teams at the top and the bottom are probably the most likely, unless you are willing to trade, unless there's a team that just announced that they're ready to start tanking. So
love that. Well, awesome, Bill. It's good to hear a little bit of what you've got going on over there. Thanks for giving some thoughts on my Anthony Richardson dilemma at this point, and look forward to catching up with you guys in a couple of weeks. I think next week it'll be Josh and Bill. I've got some family things going on, so we will see you when we see you. By all means, hit us up on Twitter. At Fantasy Timeline, as well as you've got both of us here and Josh. I know he does a lot of start-sit questions on Sunday mornings, so feel free to reach out to him at Real Fantasy TL. But with that, I think we are out of here.
Late.